Hello, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Afnan, Hanan, Fatim, Lina. Hello everyone. Are you all listening to me? Thank you. Thank you, Lina. Okay, that's very well done. Okay, thank you. Right, shall we start recording? Okay, right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Recording started.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Could you please open the book on chapter number 10, the last chapter, please, which is talking about language and humanity. Okay, what does humanity here have to do with sociolinguistics? We will understand now. So first of all, it's reminding us with the division between language and sex, remember, and language and gender. And what's the difference? Remember, we were discussing this in chapters 4, 5, and I think later. So here we have, I'll write them down. I'll write the basic terms so that you look at them. Language and gender. Okay, this is the first definition that we have to recall or remember together. And language and sex. This is the one. Both of them are similar. But I mean, in sociolinguistics, these two terms are used in order to differentiate between the specific usages of each one. The first one, language and gender, is related, if I say language and gender, is related to grammatical inflections in the language. So each language has got its own system to inflect the grammar, the structure, like when you say he and she and so on. Fatin. You start to reach each chapter and listen to the lectures again, so this is a good way to study this course. I finished some, okay, alhamdulillah, some points it's important, but it's the final exam. We will be, okay, Shufia, Fatin, and Hanan, Lina, Afnan, everyone. You don't really memorize. I wasn't brought up in a situation to memorize. But you actually understand the idea and use your own expressions. And of course you use terms like the terms that you study, like gender, like sex, the right way, the correct way. You don't really memorize the way, I don't know how do you understand the word memorize. I mean, as long as you're explaining it properly, that's all what I want. So what I advise you to do, everybody, is to try and when you study, you have مثلا next to you a kind of draft paper, draft copybook. And on that draft, you can sort of summarize, put in points the ideas that you learn. Each chapter is talking about something, and you put all the things that are related to these. You read them and read them again. You start using them properly. That's how you learn. But you don't memorize. When I tell you what is the difference, يعني suppose that you have this مثلا, but not in the form of essay. You know, the word essay is really big. When you talk about essay questions, يعني كأنك you're asked to write something like 20 lines. ما في in linguistics, يعني you don't really need to do that. In linguistics, what you need is to provide correct information for some information questions. We call them, short questions, information. We call them information questions. So these information questions might be something like 25% of the final exam. يعني if the final exam عندك بيكون 10 questions مثلا, suppose that maybe it's more than 10 questions, بس أنا بقول لك so that you can sort of see the quantity. Suppose we have 12 questions in the final exam. Out of the 12 questions, you have 3 of them short answers, like questions to ask you for information, 3 of them. 3 others to مثلا to say whether this information given to you is right or wrong and why. So you have to provide your reason. It's again another kind of short answer. Another 3 questions, شوفي مقسمين like 25% each type. Another type of questions is like 3 of them حيكون أو 25% حيكون something like choose one correct answer and say why. And like A, B, C, or D. So you choose one and you say why did you choose that one. So you present a good reason for one line. And finally, at the end of all the question paper, your input is required. Your English is required. Your understanding is required in a way to put it in good English structure. فكله بيتجمع مع بعض. Your understanding of what we discussed in sociolinguistics, your knowledge of English language by providing proper answers and proper English, and as well as being fair enough to reward you for your study, and at the same time fair in the way that you're not writing. It's not literature. And the other 25%, هلا قلنا احنا 3 types. The 4th type is that you will be given data زي الداتا اللي احنا شفناها هنا, like from a kind of study, and you will be asked to analyze this data. What do you see in that data? In what way you find similarities? The question will be really clear for you to understand what is required. And you're not supposed to panic or to ask questions in the final exam. What does this mean? What does that mean? I need to see my teacher to help me understand. No. Part of your knowledge of English language as well as sociolinguistics is to understand what the question wants from you, what the questions require from you. So it all lies on your head and on your shoulders as your responsibility in this final stage of your work, of your study in the university, so that as a university student you are required to be responsible for the exam paper and what is given. I want you to feel relaxed. I'm telling you in details what is the final exam going to look like. It's going to be a few pages and some questions, really. Different types. So أنا نوعت يعني I made variety of different types of questions so that you can have a good chance to answer, as well as to have different ways of providing your answer, so that your chance of getting a high mark will be bigger. Yani in the view of some people, I don't agree with this totally. Yani if you know the subject well and you study well and you are prepared, you shouldn't care, really. You should not care about what type of questions, whatever. حيكون من الكتاب. أنا مش هجيب لكم من other materials, يعني, you know. So if you are, yes, Fatin, that's true. If you know the course, and you've been attending, حتى if you don't attend, the book is ready made for you to understand, and the language used is perfect. هذا الكتاب من أحسن الكتب اللي في Sociolinguistics. So you get the clear idea and you'll be more than fine. You will be fine and even more than fine. وأنا هذا مدرساك عدة مرات for external students like yourselves, and many students used to score high marks عندي 98 out of 100 يعني 95. كتير عندي أخذوا هذا العلامات. حتى مش last semester I wasn't able to teach, to have enough time. I used to be very busy, and now I'm busy as well, but يعني I was able to find some time to give my students, to give you this course. المهم إنه that's true. If you really, يعني if you read the book twice, you will be better than what you would think. لأنه the ideas are really, وبعدين إحنا we discussed them. So relax, yes, don't panic, and take it easy, but at the same time study. مش take it easy and relax and sleep وتقولي خلاص قالت لنا الدكتورة انتوا just take it easy. She's not, لا take it easy in a way of not panicking. حتتذكري كل اللي احنا بنقوله. فgo over the book and write down all the points on a draft next to you, and نفس I know that you study hard يا فاتن and everyone والله, and I know that your case is not easy. I'm coming into externals, I know. Yes, of course, because if you attend like full-time students it's different. بس معلش برضو بتكوني انتي معظم احنا الناس اللي عندنا بالجامعة they were external students تعينوا عنا بعيدات والدكتورات في منهم ممتازين. بس your circumstances made you يعني study this way, and I wish you all the best, and we are there to help you. So I'll be in my office and for all your questions. فأنتي just appoint some time. لا, they shouldn't be confusing. بالعكس, the examples are very clear. انتي جميلي اللي confusing ones تعالي لي على المكتب, all of you can come and we can sit together and see why are they confusing. They're not confusing, they're very enlightening. بالعكس بيوضحوا هم الidea. They make you understand the idea even more. When you apply the idea it becomes really a piece of cake. Right, anyway, خلينا بس هلا حكينا عن الإكزام صح؟ and you feel better now. خلينا نكمل الليل. اوكي, ما قلنا what is language and sex. طب قلنا عليها language and gender. لما نقول in Arabic we have inflections for gender like يعني الصفة تتبع الموصوف, it's feminine. If the noun is feminine then the adjective is feminine. Hey is not found in English. In some languages it is. In some other languages it's more than others. In English it's limited because it's analytic language and it's not inflectional. When I say inflectional يعني it inflects, and that's how you become knowledgeable about when you talk about مثلا الوردة الحمراء. You know that الوردة in Arabic يعني it's feminine حتى لو ما في تاء مربوطة. في بعض الأسماء they don't have the تاء مربوطة, بس الadjective will make it clear that it's treated as a feminine مثلا. But in English we wouldn't know. يعني the red rose, the red book and the red car, فما بنعرف هم يعني بيقولوا عليها she ولا he. It doesn't show. English is different. So this is what we mean by gender anyway. When you discuss it this way you talk about language and gender. But when you discuss language and sex we talk about humans, يعني men, women, boys, girls. نقول إحنا some languages wouldn't care about يعني أيها الإخوة والأخوات. إحنا we say, we don't say أيتها الأخوات والإخوة. Do we say that? We always start with the male. فإحنا it's a more masculine society that we have. In other languages you know they say ladies first أو ladies and gentlemen. يعني أنا مرة أحد من ال editors in my university here in this university I was saying ليه أنت you were I submitted my paper first. Why do you make it second after that man? He said الرجال قوامون على النساء. قلت له don't say that. This is not supposed to be the case. You have to be fair. فهم they twist facts sometimes when a society is really masculine. They twist facts for their own sake لأنه هو مش قادر إنه يتناقش مع الشخص الثاني فحطها علي بيقول لي الرجال. قلت له it's not رجال. عيب عليك. Ladies first if you want to put it this way. But we are not even talking about this. not even ladies first ولا رجال ونساء وقوامون ومدري ايه والكلام اللي ما له اي علاقة في الكلام اللي احنا. So when it is a masculine society, when it is the structure of, this is the kind of structure of social roles. That's what we mean by language and sex. مهما حكيتي مع هدول البشر يعني they would still think إنه لما الإنسان يصلي ومر من قدامه حمار أو حرمة they are exactly the same. تنقطع صلاته. What? I say what? What the hell is going on? صلاة أمام رب العالمين يا أخي بتحطوا الحمار والست واحد. خافوا الله يا ربي. رب العالمين بريء من الأمور هذه والإسلام بريء. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. So I mean when you talk about this mentality then you're talking about language and sex. And male and female humans, animals and objects. يعني هم بيقولوا مثلا on one hand male humans is on one hand. On the other hand you have female humans and animals and objects مثلهم مثل الحريم. See what I mean? And we take it this way. يمكن أنا معاكم نتناقش لو أنتوا كنتوا شباب وأنا يعني I'm a female talking to them. They would be laughing probably because they guarantee their position in the society. Males, it's a masculine society. But in other societies they wouldn't. They would believe in في human rights. Yes, we are as humans having our rights عادي equal rights. مش إنه equality لأنه هو ما حيقدر يجيب أولاد وبنات. ما حيخلف ما حيولد. أنا بس بقدر أولد. ففي علاقة biological difference that we can't deny. we are different than them. They are different in this biological kind of thing. But in society, human rights should be the same. We should have equal rights. That's the point. مش مساواة في الجنس. مساواة في الحقوق. Human rights. This is what he wanted to say anyway. What is said generally. طيب خلينا نكمل. بيقول لك هنا some of طبعا this kind of belief is reflected on language and that's why we study this chapter, language and humanity. See? So this is what it means. Let's continue by looking at here the female humans. Yes, okay. And this according to the British linguist Greg Corbett in his book on linguistic gender discusses rather remarkable relationship between grammatical gender اللي قلنا عليه بس أنا حكتبه مرة ثانية gender and on the one hand يعني and human sex, right? Okay, fine. So this, he says, appears to be a particularly sexist division, right? When you say male humans on the one hand and female humans, animals and objects on the other hand, كلهم بوزن واحد. هذا اسمه sexist like that. Sexist division. Alright? يعني I'll give you an example from our university. إنهم يحطوا الحريم في جهة والرجال في جهة. يعني إحنا كلنا دكاترة مثلا. We have the same rights in the university. ما تحطوا هذا أقل وهذا أعلى. يعني things like that. Anyway, and indeed it does. So, but he also notes Russian which is related to Polish, does not have this feature, and yet it is difficult to detect any obvious difference in the relative status of Polish and Russian women and men. So in chapter 4, there was that discussion of sex and gender, and to what extent can there be a connection between social structure and social roles. So here it is. And then gender differentiation in language itself. Is there a relation? In Arabic, I think there is a big relation, a big inflectional form in grammar, which depends on the role, the social roles of men and women, or masculine and feminine. Even if we cannot confidently make predictions about the nature of the society on the basis of the grammatical structure of its language, sometimes it's not easy to see that on the structure of the grammar. So could we perhaps learn from other more sociolinguistic characteristics? Like, for example, our English example of linguistic sex differentiation in chapter 4, because we discussed it in chapter 4. All consisted of sex, preferential tendencies for women to use more correct forms. Remember when we say that women are more conscious about using the structure than men? Men don't use to care if they use a simple word or a more sophisticated word. Women are more conscious because their role, in England, it used to be like us now. They used to look down at women and see that they have weak role to play and they don't recognize them, and so that's why they started to defend themselves and look after the language that they use and try to impress other people. And when the conversation starts, they never started to, men will start the conversation and men will also end it, and all these roles, social roles. I'll write it down, social again, because I wrote it before, social roles, okay? So here this is with relation to sex, specific, distinct, male and female varieties. All come from the technology or technologically non-advanced societies or communities where sex roles were much more clearly delineated. So is it therefore possible that the larger and more inflexible the difference between the social roles of men and women in a particular community, the larger and more rigid the linguistic differences tend to be? Can you answer this for me? To put it in a simple language, do you think that if there is a big difference socially between men and women in a society, this kind of difference can also be reflected on language itself as well? So here the following is also relevant to make you able to answer this question. We noted in chapter 4, he's also reminding us of what happened in chapter 4, that society lays down different roles for men and women. See with me? Yes, and I think so as well. Yeah, but he doesn't want to give you the final answer straight away. He wants you to read about other languages and so on. See with me, please, page 186. This is where I am now, just the second page. So if there are different roles for men and women, and it's equally true that what society lays down can or does change and will change if enough members of the society feel that it is desirable that this should happen. So in most Western societies, for instance, many people have altered or are alternatively or alternating the way they feel about what is appropriate for as a gender role. as consent. If you leave it for the society and you don't care or you don't scream as a female, your rights will be gone, خلاص. So that's what happened. In the Western society, they started to fight. Altered يعني changed from one state to another. يعني the Western society in the 18th century مثلا, it used to have the same kind of things that we are suffering from now. Yani women come next, even after animals. They used to be very badly treated. And then women started to scream and to talk and to write and so on. They started to fight very hard. And during the 19th century, many moves have been done by women, and the society started to listen to them finally. And then the situation altered. That's what altered means. Altered from bad to better, to good situation and treatment for women. In the 20th century, they started to be having their rights. Women, يعني to have their rights. إحنا we don't want more than our rights. So we have to have equal rights. يعني أنا في الإسلام, يعني in our religion, الإسلام حلل, يعني بالعكس, يعني أعطى المرأة everything. And then we have one Jannah and one Nar, one Kaaba only for both of us, for all, for everybody, men, women, boys, girls, everybody يعني go around the same Kaaba. ما قال هذه كعبة للحريم وهذه كعبة للرجال, هذه جنة للحريم. يعني our religion doesn't talk about this. Very civilized religion. إحنا اللي human beings اللي بنخرب الدنيا. So that's how they were. Yeah, we are according to our right. We are equal. لكن physically we are not equal طبعا. Men are different. They don't have their monthly period, you know. They don't give birth. We give birth. They can't. يعني ستنا مريم عندها سيدنا عيسى عليه السلام without father. بس ما في أب عنده baby, عنده child من غير mom. يعني we can, yeah, in some situations see the difference. بس إحنا we don't talk about this. We have equal rights, مش physical ability, rights. Okay, and these beginnings of a move away from gender role stereotyping, probably explaining the fact that linguistic differences between younger men and women, a very interesting finding from sociolinguistic research, are statistically smaller than in the case of all the speakers. So much of this reduction in linguistic sex reduction, this is what we mean by alter. Fatid and Nora and everybody. And Hanan and Afnan. Okay, so there was that alter. That alter in changing the situation. So there was a reduction in linguistic sex. And linguistic sex differentiation appeared to be taking place as an unconscious reflection of unconscious. يعني انت ما بتيجي تقولي خلاص احنا we stop having problems, let's now use it in language. No, it comes to be really unconscious. Unconscious attitudinal change. That's what happens in the language. من غير شعورنا, it reflects naturally on language. That's what it means, unconscious attitudinal change, unconsciously. However, overt social movements to reduce sexual discrimination and gender roles. يعني overt and the opposite is covert. Covert يعني covered. Overt يعني clear. On the surface we can see it, and we overt and covert يعني covered, like you can't see it. Okay, and these conscious attempts have not, however, for the most part, focused on the actual differences between the speech of men and women. فأنت بتشوفي differences طبعا غصبا عنه من الواقع. يعني our nature is different. That's why the speech is overtly different, because it's covertly different. Covertly and overtly, both. the type of structure and the type of vocabulary of language themselves, you see that women choose different types of vocabulary than men. Okay, about language and sex, in the language itself, مثلا English would say, يعني like that German. طب how about if the German is a female؟ برضو بدك تقولي عنها man على الwoman، يعني يكون very clear contradiction. ف society is like English society started to use instead of chairman, chairperson. The person, سواء male or female, this will be covered. And because chairman consists of chair, right, plus man or man or maybe what is that? Yes, or woman. So it's better to call it chairperson. يعني, and that was possible to do in some words. لأنه مثلا it doesn't work all the time with everything. Cupboard, for example. Cupboard, you know, اللي هي the cupboard that you use. Cupboard is not cup plus board, no. Although you can have the division cup and board, but cup doesn't mean cupboard, doesn't have anything to do with cup, doesn't have anything to do with board. It happens to be a word that consists of cup and board, but it means something else. يعني خزانة. It's one morpheme. برافو عليك يا فاتن. So this kind of one morpheme is a false compound. We call it in morphology false. It appears as if it's a compound, but it's not a compound. Like in German is a compound in English, in linguistics, يعني generally. And yes, one morpheme, then they are not related, the cup and board together. برافو عليكي. فإحنا يعني English language started to have this stage, first starting to call it chairwoman لو كانت هذا phase during the age of alternation, reformation if you like. But then of them drawn attention to it, at least to an apparent male bias if they use chairman all the time to call a woman. And that's why on page 187 we can see that they started using chairperson. And you can say, for example, for women, if you are sure about the chairman, that the chairman is a female, you say chairwoman. Like if you are not sure and you don't want to offend for yourself to appear يعني narrow-minded person, you would say مثلا chairperson. So here this reflected on all types of languages that is possible to do. So that was a possible example. Another possible example is a sentence like that mentioned on page 187. Like مثلا, the first person to finish dinner. You would avoid saying his or her. You say the first person to finish their dinner, right? You can use their instead of his or her. Or maybe, if possible, not to use any pronoun, you would say the first person to finish dinner. And that's it. فأنت بتسمي person here it refers to all types of persons, both types, males and females. Okay? So the fact that he can be used in this way and she cannot may well reflect the traditionally male-dominated structure, you see? So it wasn't only male-dominated social role. It is reflected on language to dominate the structure. Linguistically, in recent years, can you see that on page 187? Speakers and writers have tried to avoid this appearance of inequality. إحنا والله بالعربي I don't know, they don't care. يقول لك الرجل الذي وإحنا بنكون women موجودين، يا أخي رجل مين؟ عيب عليكم. قولوا الشخص، قولوا يعني in language it's possible to say anything. But anyway. So this kind of reformation took place long time ago in Western societies. So speakers of Finnish and Hungarian point out with some amusement that this is a problem which simply does not occur in their language, اللي هم from Finland and from Hungary. You can see that in the previous chapters, in chapter 3. So English, though, has always had a much easier and much more sensible way out of this problem. By using, for example, like as I told you, the first person to finish their dinner. And I came across also expressions like the first person to finish dinner, generally. So English also has a number of pairs of words for males and females, like what we said earlier, all chairperson, chairman and chairwoman. We have gentleman and gentle lady. We don't say gentle lady, we all gentlemen and ladies, man, woman, boy and girl. We never say man and lady. We say man and woman, but the equivalent to lady is a gentleman. So the terms of this site have become the topic of some comments because closer examination show that in gender roles, generally, they differ. So it's highly probable that the way in which their use differs reflect the presumably also reinforce different attitudes. An attitude is implicit, is covertly found to men and women and gender role generally. So the connotation of the word lady, right, for example, are rather different from those of the word gentleman. As far as usage is concerned, lady is in many respects actually an equivalent to man. So many English speakers tell their children that it is impolite to call or refer to someone as a woman. فيها some taboo, woman. If you say man, the taboo is not there, but if you say woman, the taboo is there. And she less respect. Shop assistants in Britain may be referred to as sales ladies, but not sales gentlemen. They say sales and salesmen and sales ladies. So here ladies wear. We don't say women's wear, but we say men's wear. See now page 188. Are you following, everybody? Yeah? There is what we call in linguistics, I'll write it down, euphemism. Euphemism, which means, I'll write the Arabic, here طبعا it's the euphemism is the positive connotation. The Arabic word for that, yes, thank you, young ladies, Fatin, Hanan, Noura, everybody, for replying. Euphemism is the positive connotation. بالعربي بنقول عليها, let me convert it to Arabic, yes. تهذيب, where is the ha? Yeah, okay. تهذيب الكلام. That's the meaning of euphemism. The other linguistic term is when you say تقبيح, تقبيح الكلام. let me tell you حسب هنا موجودة اللي هي euphemism, and the other one is dysphemism, like that. Dysphemism. Okay, this is dysphemism. اللي has negative connotation. Okay, so this is dysphemism. The theory itself اسمها the extremism. هذه تحت how can we say, connotations. يعني we say X connotations if you like. The X connotations يعني سواء positive أو يعني positive or like that negative. The connotation can be either positive or negative. That's the meaning of extremism. يعني X connotations. Do you understand that now? That's what we mean here. So when you say women, لما تقولي بالعربي we have similar kind of thing. يعني تقولي مثلا الحريم. يعني أنا واحدة بتقول حرمة عيشته مثلا. لو واحد منهم قال حرمة تقولي حرمة عيشته. Why do you say that? Because you know النساء ممكن تقولي النسوة النساء. الستات ممكن باللهجة العامية الستات ولا الحريم. بتقولي الحريم has got a negative connotation, you know, and especially if a man is saying that الحريم مننا حريم إيش يا ابني عيب, you know, that's the connotation. It's euphemism. So because it has a sexual implication with a negative connotation, that's what they want to say. So this is a sexual connotation. So here we are still dealing with language and humanity. طيب خلينا نروح على another point which is related to sexual connotation. When we say similarly girl and boy are also by no means precise equivalent. فإحنا لو ما قلنا girl يعني هما they have okay. They don't have that kind of negative connotation like men and women. نقول إحنا men and ladies. بتكون more polite. Not very wide use of individuals aged over about 20. So if you are about 20 or يعني around 20 like 18, 19 يعني I stop calling you girls and حتى I don't say girls for you, صح? I always call you young ladies, صح? Young ladies. So young ladies is a nicer usage than girls as such. In your standard as doing the final, يعني one of the final courses, you're a university student, I never call you يا طالبات ولا يا بنات. I call you the English term, young ladies. يعني what could be the Arabic term for young ladies? What? يا فاتنات? I don't know what. In Arabic. Okay, شابات. But I don't know. يعني أنا بلاقي فتيات. Maybe, but I mean, I kind of have another feeling that young ladies is more, it has more positive connotation than any other. But I like to use young ladies for my students. Sabaya, yes, if you use it in your dialect, yeah, I call you Sabaya. مضبوط, صحيح. برافو عليكي. That's true, Afnan and Nora. Yeah. So a number of speakers have begun to avoid using the word girl to refer to adult women, you see? So they call them ladies. وأنا علشان أحسسكم إنكم يعني you have a special position in terms of age, I call you young ladies. And to make my kids مثلا feel that they are responsible, I say gentlemen, you know? They're still young, but I make them feel more responsible. It's a matter of your own understanding. Yani, you know, for boys who are in their 15, 16 years of age, you call them gentlemen and they feel so great, you know, they start feeling that they are responsible and they are men. Well, I don't know. After 10 years in goal, Harry wanted to find, this is an example, to find a lady. Here, John is going out with a new lady tonight. So here, Lakoff writes that it would not make sense to say something like after 10 years in Gaul, Harry wanted to find a lady and doesn't make much sense. فأنتي يعني شوفي يا شباب بالضبط يا شباب برافو عليكي يا نورا هم صغار بيكونوا لسه حتى يعني they don't start shaving yet but you call them يا شباب they feel they're big, they're responsible. I don't know. So this would formerly indeed have been anomalous. And many younger speakers, however, it would now be equal, yani quite unusual. Because language and society are so closely related, they are linked. Language and society. Yeah, بس عشان يفرحوا. I know that. Yeah, so بس عشان يفرحوا. Now you say it because you understand the connotation. But the word shabab doesn't say it on the surface, i.e. overtly, but covertly يعني it implies this meaning of farha, of your own يعني additional credit. You're giving them credit. كلمة شباب doesn't show you credit بس انتي فاهمها. It's inside. صبايا credit يعني this is a credit that you want. So this comes a play on words. This comes under مثلا the selection of you select your own vocabulary by understanding them. لا لو انتي ما كنتي فاهمة ايش يعني صبايا you wouldn't choose them properly probably. Same thing, young ladies, gentlemen, men, and the differences, and so on. So the chapter keeps on talking about things like that. You know, now I'm reading on page 189. It's talking about all that. Change by directing attention towards the linguistic reflections of aspects of Yes, hi. The recording went, I don't know why, and now I hope you still can hear me. So here, in the United States of America, for example, names for hurricanes are now equally disturbed. No, not disturbed, but distributed between male and female names. Terafum Shumat, they call them, like Andrew and like whatever. So whereas before they were entirely females, لأنهم كوارث, هم يعني catastrophes. فهم they used to feel this kind of negative connotation اللي هو قالوها on page 188 euphemism. Sexually, يعني لما يكون تقبيح الكلام they always refer to women. So the hurricane comes with all the destruction in the society. And that's why they used to call it before, maybe during the early 20th century, like names of women, females. Now it's alternating between males and females, equally the same, and perhaps more importantly, job description labels are no longer marked for sex. This job requires the employee, they call employee for females and for males, requires the employee to do this and that and to attend during these hours and so on and so forth. The man, before that, they used to refer to it as he has to do this, he has to do that. Okay, that's a very important point as well. So in the case of lady, woman, okay. In the case of lady, woman, and girl. What is this case? what does he want to say about this? However, the linguistic change achieved seems for some speakers at least not to have been the one desired. Traditionally, man has been used more often than woman, as we said. حتى يعني the menu on the he always referred to as he, يعني the user, and in schools and in companies and so on. حتى يعني the number of employees used to be males more than females, while lady and girl have been employed more often than gentlemen and boy. Okay, conscious again started to take place. I'll write it down. Conscious, like this. Attempts. Conscious attempts started to take place and have been directed at reducing the use of girl as a demeaning term for an adult woman, right? And of lady as a trivializing euphemism. Can you see the word euphemism? Like that. Euphemism. هي تقبيح الكلام. And sometimes it is meant to be used like that. Euphemism against diphonism. So euphemism is تهذيب الكلام. يعني it's a better kind of connotation, and at increasing the use of less discriminating woman. Because when you say woman, they قلتي حرمة, and lady is like صبايا, like يعني I don't know إحنا عندنا إيش بيقولوا. مرات أنا بلاقيهم بيقولوا مدام, and I don't like the word madam, to be honest, because it's borrowed from French. حتى مش English, French. So I don't know, they say madam, they always say madam. إيش أقدر أسوي لك madam? I hate that word, to be honest. Anyway, so it is quite possible, however, that in future it will actually be the term lady that will be, or that will see an increase in the usage. Linguistic changes follow social changes. That is a very linguistic changes, okay, follow. You can mark this one. It's a very, very important kind of statement. Follow linguistic, social changes quite readily. So clearly, in other words. Okay, but it is not always a simple matter to make them precede social changes, because, you know, it's really a matter of personal convincing attitude in this matter. Some people would reject it, so that's why it doesn't seem to be really that quick. So here, this sort of involvement by linguists in issues to do with language and gender is an example of the way in which many linguists, sociolinguists feel. See the word feel here? Alright? Quite rightly, that it is important for those of us who have some insight into the nature of relationship between society and language. So here is the relationship between society and language. Right, well done. Here, even more important contribution of this kind is illustrated by the way in which many linguists are currently becoming increasingly concerned about the loss of linguistic diversity from the world. So here we have what we call linguistic diversity or difference. Linguistic diversity is the difference in linguistics to show between sex in the society. And this is, we said, a direct reflection of what the society believes. Okay, so in previous chapters we looked at the number of cases in which irrational attitudes and discriminatory decisions, often made by governments or other official bodies acting out of ignorance. So here, discriminating, I'll write it down like that. Irrational attitudes. Irrational attitudes. Okay, and discrimination decisions. Are acts of are acting out of ignorance or prejudice. You know the word prejudice? What does prejudice mean? See page or pages 189 and 190. Okay, what is prejudice? Yani, any idea? Young ladies, Nora, Lina, Fatin, Hanan, Afnan, what is prejudice? What does it mean in Arabic? What is the Arabic equivalent for that term? Prejudice. ما درستوا كتابة yeah that's right حنان وأفنان. There is a very, it's an interesting يعني piece of literature, prose writing, هو اسمها Pride and Prejudice لإيميلي برونتي. إيميلي برونتي is a female English writer. في هذاك الوقت كانت بداية يعني التحرر اللي هي women taking their rights. Discrimination, برافو عليك. It's a kind of discrimination. يعني ignorance and prejudice. فالواحد لما يكون عنده prejudice in the society, then it is an act out of ignorance. It's an act out of discrimination and all of that. And have led to language policies which have had determinal effect on child's education. تعصب، برافو، yes, kind of تعصب أو تحامل أو يعني تحيز. all of these words, very bad words. These are very bad words. بيوروا إنه العقلية يعني ضيقة. Anyway, so this reflects on children's education. Alright, children's education. فلما يطلع child تحت هذا السيتويشن ويكون ولد بس يجي عمره 10 سنين بصير يقول حرمة اجلسي في البيت، أنا رجال بطلع، هاي المصيبة. Which have had this kind of determinal effect on children's education and even on society as a whole, right? So we saw that the British government in the 18th century, they started thinking seriously about it in the 18th century. That's why when you go and get our education over there, we get equal rights in education, in everything. And we start learning about our rights. What is our right? It is this and that. ورب العالمين أعطانا this right. رب العالمين in our civilized Islam religion. So here, in the 18th century, احنا تكلمنا على the British government when they, at that time and earlier than the 18th century, they started to look at other languages used in the British Isles as being illegal. Those languages are like Gaelic. So احنا بنعرف إنه Gaelic is a language in Scotland that is used as a native tongue of some people هناك. And as it was used to be considered as illegal in the 18th century, in the way of which non-standard dialects of English, such as, you remember the VE, which stands for American African Vernacular of English, they started using that as being less respectable and inferior to the standard English, because it's African, it's colored, and this kind of racist attitude. It's an attitude, it's an impolite and uncivilized way of behavior. So we notice the extent to which varieties of pidgin English, when we say pidgin, English as used in derived from the standard and so on, like looking at pidgin English as broken. It's not broken English actually, it has a system. When we say broken, ما فيها structure, which is not true concerning pidgin. And we observe the political disadvantages to which speakers of minority languages such as Romani, okay, this is a minority language, can often find themselves. So many other similar examples of prejudice. So that was an example of prejudice. And unreason, دايما prejudice wouldn't have a logical reason. That's how it started. In early, maybe towards end of the previous century, for example, a minister in French government tried to outlaw the use of English words in French, because before that they started to say, why French has to stand up and be independent. We want to get rid of all those words of English origin. But then they started looking at themselves as being, following a very stupid decision. And accordingly, because all languages are blended, we have lots of English words in our Arabic language, lots of Arabic words inside English, and languages are like that. So accordingly, the French minister in 1994 started to say, لا خلاص, now we are wrong. Let's just use French the way it is. And it's erroneous to say that we get rid of English words and so on. That the French language is under some kind of threat. It's not true to say that. So many languages are under threat, as we shall see below, but not that way. But French is most certainly not one of them. So there has been also powerful political movement in the United States in recent years, known as English only in recent years, because in the United States there are even many languages that are not English and which are related to the Indo-European languages and families of languages like the Tapajo and Navajo and Louisiano. It's the language of the original people who used to live in the United States. So this move, I'll write it here. The English only move. That English only move or movement that has been introduced in the United States in recent years, which has been attempting to exclude languages other than English from educational and cultural political life of many American states. Some of the supporters of this move, a lot of racist people argue that they are in favor of it. So those are prejudiced people, because the position of English is being threatened. This is what they think. So in actual fact, of course, all the thousands of language varieties in the world, American English is the one which is most definitely the least under threat, because everybody uses English for communication, all these means of communication, and English is not threatened at all. But because they are looking at it from a very narrow mentality. So it is sad but true, sociolinguists sociolinguistic fact that language issues can bring out the worst as well as the best in human beings. And we can see that human being languages can benefit a lot from the sociolinguistic studies, but at the same time it can harm also some other languages and some people who would otherwise be proud of themselves on being intelligent and rational, and can behave in the most illogical ways, because they would feel that, yeah, bravo عليك يا Fatin. Yes, it has good aspects, but it has bad aspects at the same time. So encourage people to think in more sensible way is good aspect about languages, and avoid racism. And by providing them with more information about language, that is a very good aspect. Yeah, that's right, Nora. Thank you. Yes, good and bad behavior. So this is important for all sorts of reasons. Lacking, as educated people, we can see the bad aspects and avoid them, and focus on the good and sensible reasons to do with fairness, equality, and even the future of humanity in general. This is the idea. None of the irrational attitudes towards language we have just cited has any basis in fact, but they can have all sorts of unfortunate consequences if we give our mind and selves a free kind of way to go over everything. We can fall into the fallacy, the mistake of being, without feeling. Okay, so here one of the very distressing consequences that attitudes of this type have been also not only racism among languages, but language, what we call it, language death. That is one big fallacy, by saying that خلينا احنا unify مثلا كل العربيك into one form, which is standard Arabic. Forget about the dialects. طب ليش؟ Dialects will die if we do that, and so on. So this is language death. not تيجي directly, تيجي through language shift. So shifting starts to take place first. Examples, there are plenty of examples. See page 191, right? So when it comes to language death, one of the questions linguists are often asked: how many languages are there in the world? There is no definite answer. Young ladies, by the way, there is the Salah, Maghrib Salah. Do you want to take some break for praying? We can pray and then come back and meet for another 10 minutes. By then we will be able to finish the chapter. لأنه اللي باقي حاجة بسيطة. Thank you very much. Okay, go and pray, and I wish you, inshallah, an acceptable prayer. I will stop the recording here and then we'll come back in 10 minutes. Okay?
Recording stopped.
Thank you very much. Let's see you in 10 minutes. Don't be later than 1:45. We will meet again, inshallah, at 6:45. Please not later so that we can finish. Thank you so much. See you soon. Yes, Assalamu alaikum, young ladies. Are you there?
Recording started.
Yes, hello again. Okay, that's fine. Taqabbal Allah. Okay. Now we have some examples to show what do we mean by language shift. We know that language death is when the language disappears because of getting the number of its native speakers smaller and smaller until they just vanish. خلصنا يعني. And languages are dying out without being replaced at an increasingly catastrophic rate. And that is a loss. So here we say that the process of language shift is what the languages might go through before language death. And it means that a particular community gradually abandons its original native language and goes over to speaking another one instead. So here, for example, 200 years ago, for example, some of the population of Ireland were native speakers of Irish Gaelic, different than the Scottish Gaelic. Now the vast majority are native speakers of English because people started to ignore making their kids learn it. So before the Roman conquest, the population of much of what is now France, for example, were speakers of Gaelic, of Celtic language, Gaulish. Subsequently, however, they shifted to the language of their conquerors, which is Latin, which eventually became French. So later on, the northern part of France was conquered by the Germanic speakers speaking France. And these conquerors, however, eventually went through a process of language shift and ended up speaking French too. So similarly, the Norwegian as well is the fourth example. So the first example was the sociolinguistic historic change of Irish Gaelic. The second one was the Celtic language in France. The third language was in the northern part of France, Franks, the Germanic speaking. And the fourth example is in Norwegian speaking Vikings, who subsequently conquered and settled in parts of northern France, which are called Normandy, the Normandies. And this is some historic kind of language shifting. And those Normandy also shifted from their Scandinavian language to French. A fifth example is that few generations later, the result of Norman conquest of England in 1066, these former Scandinavians took the French language to England. Once in England, however, it took the descendants of the Norman conquerors only a few generations before they shifted once again, this time to English. And what is different now on page 192, this is important really to make you realize what does language shift mean. About the modern situation, however, is the speed and the extent of language shift, which is taking place around the world. So in most cases, moreover, language shift is led to complete language death and the total disappearance of languages from the world. When the Normans stopped speaking Norwegian and shifted to French, Norwegian still survived in its Scandinavian homeland. But if Irish finally disappears from Ireland, the Irish Gaelic, which seems likely, although not inevitable, then this will represent an incidence of complete language death. Okay, that was in these countries. So in Europe, a number of languages have died, even in quite recent times. For example, Cornish died out of Cornwall in the 18th century. Cornish, right? Cornish is an example of language death. And Manx as well, a close relative of Irish. Okay. Lots of its last native speakers on the Isle of Man in the 1950s, and many other European languages are currently under threat of dying out, like Scottish Gaelish. Okay, Scottish Gaelic. And in Brittany as well. All of these are threatened to reach the stage of language death. And Frisian. In Netherlands and in Germany. There is also the Sami Lappish, also in Norway, in Scandinavian, and Romansh as well. Okay, Romansh in Switzerland. All of these are languages that are threatened to reach the stage of language death. In the rest of the world, the problem is much more serious. For example, in the Americas, for instance, at the time of the first European contact in the 15th century, at least 8,000 different languages were spoken. English wasn't there yet, or Spanish. In the last 400 years, at least 300 of these 1,000 different languages died out completely. Of the remaining 700, only 17 have more than 100,000 speakers. So if the speakers become less, the language started to get threatened of dying. And only one of those, Navajo, see, that's how you write it. Navajo, sometimes they write it with a J, but they pronounce it as Navajo, in North America. More than 50 languages have died in the USA alone since the arrival of Europeans. In the Pacific Ocean area, the problem is probably even more serious. Perhaps as many as a quarter of all the world's languages are spoken in this area, and very many of them indeed under threat. In Australia, for instance, there are about 200 Aboriginal languages as well. Of course, 50 are already dead because they introduced English, and English becomes the official language in education and in governmental usages and so on. And another 100 are very close to extinction. Perhaps as close of 30 will make it into a 21st century. In our world, you know, there are languages that are spoken, Arabic dialects that are spoken in northern Yemen, in Rub al-Khali, and maybe North Oman. And those languages are for Arabic southern, they call it modern southern languages. Have you heard about them? That they are threatened to die? Yeah? Let me try to remind you. Any idea? Young ladies, hello? Are you with me? You don't have any idea about those languages? I'll give you a clue. Those languages are actually spoken by shepherds, يعني اللي بيرعوا الغنم, and they don't mix with the cities, in the cities. هم أكتر they are Bedouins, but I mean these languages were confined to them, and they are related to Arabic. And there is one very famous English professor, linguist, whose name is Jane Jane Watson. هي عندها كتب كثيرة. Jane Watson is a lover of tracing these languages. She went to North Yemen, and she lived there for a few months to get in contact with those people. You got it now? Fatin, got what? يعني the languages اللي هم Arabic dialects that are threatened to die. هم 7 of them. 7 Arabic languages. يعني languages we say يعني of Arabic dialects, let us say, that are about and some of them have died, مظبوط. Some other 7 Arabic are still surviving, لكنه يعني the speakers are getting less and less. يعني one of them is really about to die. هم اسمهم Arabic modern South Arabian. Modern South Arabian dialects, if you like. Dialects. تعرفوا إيش هم؟ Any idea? I'll tell you. يعني أنتوا يمكن سامعين فيهم. What is South Arabian? Like Soqotri. Soqotri. You know, after the island which is Socotra, another one is Mehri. سمعتوا فيهم? And a third one is Jibali. Jibali كتير معروفة. يعني they call it Jibali. Another one is Harsus, like that. Harsus. It's a long O. Yeah, you see, يعني كلنا احنا سمعنا فيهم Harsus. What else? Bathan, like that. Ha, like that. Bathan. And Hobyot. Hobyot. These are the 7 ones. The most threatened ones are يعني هو الجبالي والحرسوس are mostly يعني they have more native speakers. لكن أعتقد Bathan and Hobyot are very threatened. بس شوية, very few thousand of people are old and they are يعني they know how to speak it. But I mean they are like Bedouins and they have their own South Arabian. There have been the old South Arabian اللي هو زي صبيان يمكن الصبيان من صبيا في اليمن, and Minian and Qatabanian and Hadramaut. All of these are found in Yemen. There are some Ethiopic also dialects and languages that are about to die, and so on. But these are the 7 Arabic dialects that are about to die. فإحنا عندنا in Arabic يعني the language shift and the language بعدين its society becomes very closed away from the cities and from education and everything. Linguists believe that this is a very serious problem. Okay? We all believe that this is a serious problem, and that the preservation of linguistic diversity in the world should have a high priority in the same way that the preservation of biological diversity does. it is obvious, for example, that the connection between language and culture is an intimate one. So when the culture becomes remote, بعيد عن cities وعن هذا, languages of that culture started to go down, decline, and gradually until they die. This is the language shift stages. So here, the disappearance of languages from the world could greatly speed up the process of cultural homogenization. And there is the homogenization, and the monocultural world would not only be a very dull, but probably also a very stagnant place. So languages as partial barriers to communication are probably also a good thing, since they make it more difficult for the cultures of economically powerful and popular societies to penetrate and replace those smaller communities. So that's the language shift. Language C, pages 192 and 193 for more discussion about language shift, which is the stage that takes place on languages before. Sorry about the ad here, I wanted to say inverted commas like that. Language shift like that. Okay, so here is language shift as an activity. Is an activity which requires considerable society or sociolinguistic experts expertise to knowledge, as well as hard work and language. It requires large sum of money to what do you call it? Reserve the language and protect it from dying. The aim is to help small culturally threatened communities to transmit their language to the next generation. If you transmit it to the next generation, then there will be younger people to use it and to protect it. You protect the language also through books, writing these languages on books, and make it the language to be educated in schools. So here you need money to do that. You introduce it for nursery schoolings using mother tongue, and this can be vital, and the provision of incentives and opportunities to use the language in everyday life is also important, and it is necessary for communities to understand that bilingualism is normal and beneficial. Old, narrow-minded people used to think that teaching English for young generation would make children lose their Arabic. This is very stupid indeed. It is on the other way around. It's beneficial and not some kind of aberration. Or another word for aberration is corruption. It is not. Very stupid people used to think this way, and keeping their thinking away from educated people, so that they just make up their mind and make a decision, and then cause people to be ignorant and things like that. So linguist's role in the society is very important for sociolinguistics, if you want, in particular. Perhaps even more important, however, are people's attitudes to language. That is more important. And there are very many, often complex reasons why language shift takes place. Frequently, though people abandon the language, which is the repository of their culture and history, and which has been the language of their community for generations because they feel ashamed of it. If rich and powerful people, more technology or technologically advanced than ourselves, tell you frequently enough that your language is مثلا inferior or backward, يعني فيها تخلف, children will feel ashamed. So people actually make this kind of attitude or negative attitude to start the language shift and so on. If you also see that people who speak your language are treated unfavorably and discriminated against, then that too will obviously be powerful, distinctive against using it. يعني إحنا in our world مثلا it is an advantage or a privilege that Arabs would say that I know English. And if you accuse somebody that this somebody doesn't know English, يعني as if you're accusing this person of being ignorant. So they feel that they are mistreated and they start looking down at Arabic. So people's attitude is very important. So such negative evaluation, okay, يعني the negative evaluation is discussed on pages 192, 93, sorry, and 194. So if you read about this, you will find that this kind of negative evaluation is not only related to language, but also to languages, but also often made, as we have seen in case of dialects. People start to hide their dialects or not use it, abandon it. That will cause the language shift or the dialect shift. So we have dialect shift as well. Dialect shift. So dialect shift will be an irrational attitude. Non-standard varieties are widespread, although it makes no sense at all to claim that one variety of English, for example, is linguistically superior to the other, like, for example, the Standard English. Standard English, which is also called received pronunciation. Do you know that? Or it's also referred to as the Queen, the BBC English. Sometimes in other places it's called the Queen's English, or maybe the high class English, you know, and other kinds of namings for this. The rest of the dialects are referred to as the working class dialect or the lower class dialect of the society. And children, however, may feel that it's unfavorable attitude for them and to speak it in schools, and their teachers مثلا start to discriminate between them as middle class accent and, you know, the working class accent. And evidence on this point comes from the work of social psychologists, and starting to see to what extent this affects the children. So here, people's speech can influence, you know, how they are perceived by the use of matched guise experience. Okay. They made this as an experiment on 5 people in the UK, okay, using 5 different English dialects. When one of them was the standard dialect, or the standard English as they call it. What happens is that in that 5 different speakers all reading the exact same passage and all with different accents of English, they are then asked to give their opinions of the 5 speakers. And it is explained that the investigators are interested in how skilled the investigators are interested in how skilled the subjects are at deducting things about the speaker's attitude and capabilities for their voice alone. So subjects may be asked, for instance, to locate speakers on the scale from very intelligent to very unintelligent, and in between there is very friendly, very unfriendly, and so on. It's often found that subjects show a high level of agreement in finding that, say, speaker number 3, we have 5 speakers, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. Speaker number 3 is more intelligent than speaker number 2, who in turn is less friendly than speaker number 4. And the interesting point about these experiments is that 2 of the speakers are unbeknown to the subject. They don't know the subject, but they use their own dialects. But the same speaker using 2 different accents. So if therefore speaker 2 and speaker 5 are the same person, but using different accents, and yet speaker 2 is evaluated as being more intelligent than speaker 5, then this difference must be due to the different forms of language he or she was using. So the fact experiments in Britain have shown the speakers using an RP, which is the received pronunciation, or the standard dialect speaking guys, are generally regarded as more intelligent and more educated, but less friendly and less likable than the same speakers using the local accent speaking guys or deviation, if you like. So this illustrates, see what does it illustrate? See on page 195. What does it illustrate? It actually illustrates the way in which we reply on the stereotype when we first meet and interact with people. So your accent and your dialect has got a lot to do in impressing people from the first time. As soon as they start speaking, those speakers, the RT speakers may be perceived as being unfriendly by non-received pronunciation speakers unless and until they are able to demonstrate the contrary. They need more effort to show that they are friendly. That is all because of the accent. So similarly, and this is of course far more worrying, that yes, I don't know, the recording was lost for a second. Okay, so here the vernacular and the non-standard varieties have a serious, irrational and unfavorable attitudes towards them. And this is one of the reasons why the dialect becomes threatened through dialect shift and dialect death. So dialect death see page 195, okay? So it may not be immediately obvious that dialects are just intimately linked to cultures as our languages, but yes, they are, okay? Okay, on page 196, what do we have here is also necessary to point out standardization. Can actually cause rather than solve communication problems. So they can cause and standardization. When you standardize a dialect or a language, it means that you are calling people indirectly to abandon their own dialect or their own language. So here, geographical dialect continua is threatened. The dialect continua is not related to the political geographic borders or you know that we have discussed that. So geographic borders are just some political kind of frontiers, and those boundaries are not connected. Dialect doesn't, or languages in general, they don't stick to these. So this has meant that for generations there has been ready and easy cross-border communication, of course. And working classes, where the working class Dutch people of a place called Nijmegen, for example, travel across the border of German town of Cleves to visit, to shop, and to work in the borders. So working class Germans travel in opposite direction. These are examples of having all these kinds of restrictions geographically are not found linguistically because of the freedom of people to travel and to cross the political and geographic borders. So if, for example, a middle-class Dutch people who can only speak standard Dutch want to travel to work in Germany, they have to study and learn standard German. And for example, people of Cleves, another place, cannot understand standard Dutch. And many Dutch people have learned standard German. You don't have to memorize these. These are only examples. You can see here in the Gulf countries, there is this kind of free traveling between the Gulf countries. But you can still see the difference in the different dialects in them. But if you are a frequent traveler for Bahrain, you will find that your language started to get affected by using expressions there, and if you live there and so on, and if Bahraini people come here and so on. So there is this attitudinal factors. The attitudinal factors, for example, that affect the standard variety, and they are discriminated against in various ways and made to feel that the native vernacular dialects are inferior, and so on. So these attitudinal factors are discussed also on page... one second, lady. Yes, hello. This attitudinal factors would affect the dialect inferiority or socially, or unfortunately this is true, and this is discussed on page, all the way of pages 196 and 197. So it's hardly surprising, therefore, if many of them try to shift to the standard variety, even with some level of consciousness, they do not really want to. So in this kind of atmosphere, traditional dialects or fascios can disappear surprisingly quickly. One way of combating this hostility, to help in the situation, is to point to those fortunate, more tolerant societies which do have greater respect for language varieties as good examples to be followed. People will keep on trying, So in some dialect, hostile is when they hate a certain dialect. This is a kind of hostility. Part of Europe, including England, there is a widespread view that dialects are out of date, old-fashioned, unsophisticated. I think people in the Arab society as well, especially those old-fashioned people of of Arabic language teachers and so on, used to think this way about Arabic dialects. The Arabic dialects are old-fashioned, they are unsophisticated, diverse from the standard, and economically disadvantageous. And they started to fight it by saying we have to talk Arabic, standard Arabic, but that was unreal, impractical. Okay. So as was pointed in chapter 5, the entire indigenous population of one of the, Scandinavian country, indigenous. Do you still remember the word indigenous? Any idea? Indigenous, i.e. minority. Minority speakers. This is indigenous, if you want. Nora, Lina, any idea? Hanan, do you remember the indigenous word? Any minority speakers of Luxembourg is dialect speaking. They learn and use German and French, but their mother tongue is Luxembourgish, Litzbergisch, and which is widely regarded as a dialect of German. Asli, yeah, that's right. Asli lakinno is used by minority people. Indigenous, okay, the original, but minority, used by little number of people. So here, Norway too is one of the most dialect-speaking countries in Europe, and most people do speak a form of standard Norwegian, but the majority here do not, right? Yeah, the native people, and who are little diamond. So whatever the social situation, people speak dialect on radio, on TV, here the other way around in Norway. The standard is only spoken by the indigenous. But the rest of the majority on TV, on radios, professors, مثلا, giving lectures, and they're using dialect. And authors write poems and novels in the dialect. You see the situation there? See page 197. So the most important aspect of Norwegian language situation, however, is, as we saw in chapter 7 already, that there is an enormous societal tolerance for linguistic diversity. And that what is more linguistic diversity in Norway is officially recognized and officially protected. So this is most clearly illustrated by the fact that Norway is a low in Norway there is a law which states that teachers are not allowed to try to change the way children speak in the classroom. They can always stick to that dialect. So if children come from school speaking dialect, as most of them do, they must be allowed to continue to do so. It's the opposite way in our situation. And we never study in our dialects. We start studying, converting to standard Arabic completely in all the Arab world. We have no books or education in our dialects. But إحنا linguists people, the linguists, specialized people, focus on choose to do analysis for our dialects. Okay, this provides an unfortunate contrast with Britain, مثلا, in 1994. Again, they come up with the same kind of discussion which was given. So please see all of page number 198 concerning the dialects and the different societies of how they treat standard and the indigenous languages, and also multilingual societies, as in Europe, for example, in Germany, in Switzerland. The multilingualism also prevails in countries like, it's very interesting, in Switzerland, where the majority of the inhabitants are dialect speaking, and in the so-called German speaking areas of the country are all indigenous inhabitants and are dialect speakers, and they learn also the standard, and they are called multilinguals. إحنا عندنا multilingualism as well. In contrast, in the English-speaking world, as this is on page 199, talking about English-speaking world, there is a widespread and seriously mistaken assumption that dialects are made up of a series of errors. Like the beliefs that used to prevail in our society as well, and is somewhat endowed with greater correctness, which is the standard. The standard is superior. That's what they started thinking. It started in the 19th century and early 20th. Dialects, it is believed, are inadequate or incorrect to all these beliefs. See page 199, it's talking about this. And then it talked about the fact that they started to recognize that dialects are standard, they are also correct, they are systematic, and so on. So they avoided in Britain, and they started thinking of eliminating all kinds of dialects. But then they start thinking that this is not true. On page 200, what's that? 200, yes, page 200, you can see that the elimination, the first approach that has been described as elimination of non-standard speech is now avoided. That approach wasn't really proper. Like, for example, saying I done it instead of I have done it, or I ain't got it, like I haven't got it, or he a good person instead of he is a good person, in standard English. Both of them are correct. All these usages are dialects, as long as there are speakers of that. You don't use wrong English and say, well, I'm using the dialect. No, that's not true. So there are approaches that have been discussed on pages 200 and 201. Please read about these approaches and see to what extent. The first approach was saying that these dialects are proper. The second approach has been called bidialectalism, and has received great support by linguists, and it advocates that children should be taught standard English, but they should maintain their own dialect, and that is what we understand by code switching. Okay, code switching is what happens. Like إحنا نعمل code switching from our dialect to standard Arabic all the time. We do code switching from Arabic to English as well. We speak one code if we like, total English all the time. But I mean, we can sort of mix our code by saying mixed code mixing, yeah? Code mixing. If you don't stick to one, you keep on mixing between one language to another. A third approach on page 202 is talking about what we call the third approach, that has been called appreciation of dialect differences. That is the third approach, and that's what critics of this approach have called it hopelessly utopian. You know what is utopia? What is utopia? A utopian approach. The approach of standardizing, what is utopia? Young ladies, Afnan, Hanan, Fatin, Lina, Noura, utopia. You know, in philosophy, ما أعرفش إذا درستوها, في Aristotle and his teacher, what's his name? Aristotle and Plato. Plato اللي هو Plato, like that. Plato and his pupil Aristotle. You know these? They have been talking about this utopian approach اللي هو المدينة الفاضلة. خيالية، هي مدينة فاضلة، خالية مثالية. مضبوط، خالية من الأمراض، كل واحد مريض يقتلوه، كل واحد كبير بالعمر يقتلوه. We don't need all of this. We want مدينة فاضلة, utopia. And this is impossible to do لأنه في ناس بتنولد بتكون mentally retarded or old people, we can't get rid of them. It is against humanity and all that. So it's impossible. خيالية مثالية. That's what it is considered to be when we standardize language. You can't standardize it. So, and the belief that those people who don't use the standard can't speak properly is wrong. Okay, so see the final conclusion on page 2003, which is actually talking about the fact that until the degree of tolerance at which the third approach aims has been achieved, children with no ability in standard English will continue to be disadvantageous, but this is wrong, of course, and that is not really desirable. So biodialectalism is likely to be only successful and maybe particularly dangerous if insensitivity hard handled, if it was handled by people who wouldn't appreciate them, and by so doing softening linguistic insecurity. So if we are going to foster, adopt and preserve linguistic heterogeneity in the world, and it is of course precisely linguistic heterogeneity that is the subject matter of sociolinguistics. Then we need all speakers of all languages and all dialects to be able to rest secure and in the knowledge that their varieties of language are all amazingly structurally complex, i.e. logical, and products of human mind and human society and of tens of thousands of years of human history, and that all these varieties of language are worthy of being passed on to the generations to come. That's all And this is the end of the book. So the last paragraph is beautifully constructed to make us believe that the language we speak, the dialects we speak and we understand and we exchange are perfect. They are well structured by human mentality and nothing is wrong with them. Now it's 7:35. Yani I gave you an extra 35 minutes than our my office hours are Sundays from 11 to 1, okay, p.m. And if you like Monday from 11 to 1 p.m. No, not from 11, sorry, I have a class. From 9 to 11 a.m. So please note that, but at the same time inform me about your visit beforehand. Okay, I went to the bookstore in the Khawarizm today and they assured me that they have our book. So I don't know why people didn't see their book. I don't know why. And so whoever doesn't have her book, can you try to take a photocopy from your friend if you find it that difficult for people there to understand what you want. Okay, thank you very much, Yafat. And thank you, ladies, for all your attending and participating, and I wish you all the best until then. Okay, do you want to ask anything before we leave? Do you want to see? Yeah, you took it from there, Yafat, and that's right, it's there. It's in the bookstore, and they make photocopy, and their photocopy is not bad. It's clear enough. Thank you so much, Yanura. Thank you, young ladies. I wish you all the best. And as I told you, you come to, thank you, Fatin. Come to my office. Thank you, Hanan and Noura. Thank you very much. My email, I'll write it down to you now. This is at King Abdulaziz University.edu and .sa. This is my email. So approach me at any time on the email if you want to visit, for example, the university. You say, I'm coming tomorrow. And then accordingly, we can sort of make sure that I'm there waiting for you, inshallah. Okay? All the best and good luck.
Recording stopped.
So I'll see you, inshallah, in the final exam for those who can sort of, yeah, what kind of questions, Afnan? I was talking about this, I think, to people, maybe, I don't know, didn't you hear me? It's 4 types, and the final exam is having 4 types, and each one is out of 25% if you want to put it this way. One is asking about information, one type, and a second type is asking about whether this is to choose the right term or the right answer, and to say why in one line. The third type is to say, is it true or not true and why? And the fourth type is data and analysis of the data, like the data in the book, maybe on diagrams, maybe on graphs or something. And the questions will be really clear for you enough to understand what you want to do. And you shouldn't ask too many questions in the final exam. It's your responsibility as a university student who really has to rely on herself by understanding what the question requires. And everything is from our book, as I told your friends in the beginning. It's from this book that we have covered, nothing extra. And because the book is full enough with good information that is related to to what you really need to learn in this course. So I hope this is clear enough for you. and inshallah I'll meet you when you are in good health and in the final exam, and you all please study, and that's all. Thank you very much. You take care, and fi aman Allah inshallah. Right, yalla, salamu alaikum. But you have to sign out, please. Thank you very much. Please sign out so that when I switch off the computer and everything, the recording stays there. Yalla, salamu alaikum. Bye bye.